Almost done. Passage number 9. Here we go. Let's set that timer. Keep it up, guys. Make sure that you're doing these passages as well, following along, doing them before you watch me do them. All right. 3, 2, 1, go. So we got social interaction, moral development, cognitive development, Jean Piaget, de-individuation, de-individuation, de-individuation. All right. So it seems like a social sciences passage regarding psychology, behavioral psychology, child sort of development, individuation, things like that. So I'm assuming it's going to be a bit more descriptive, a bit more causal, correlative. Going to be talking about not really a hierarchy, but just something that is important, not necessarily more important, but let's see. So whichever direction we take as a society, keeping an awareness of these occurrences is the necessary first step. So awareness of these occurrences is the necessary first step. So we're looking for, so this is the important thing, right? So that's the thing there, but what is that we're keeping ourselves aware? Let's see. As the internet slowly detaches adolescents from proper social interaction, this crucial period of cognitive and moral development may be distorted. Age restrictions to social media, content moderation, parental control, school online monitoring systems, and many other solutions are causing heated debates right now, with results that highlight the difficulty in moderating such an open source environment without infringing upon First Amendment rights. Okay, so something in terms of being aware of the problem of the internet slowly detaching adolescents from proper social interaction. Okay, so that's what we need to be aware of, is this. So the causal relationship is that we're being aware of is that the internet slowly detaches adolescents from proper social interaction, and so therefore the moral development may be distorted. Okay, so that's the relationship, and that is essentially the point of the passage, is that the author wants us to keep this in mind, because that is the first step, is being aware that this is happening. Cool. Seems really straightforward. 5 paragraphs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First shift in tone with the advent, blah, blah, blah. It does become nefarious, however, blah, 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 it's commonly thought. Okay, so definitely I would say that paragraph 3 is there that first shift in tone is. Okay, so let's see. So 7 out of 10 teens experience online bullying, yet only 1 out of 10 victims tell a trusted adult about their experience. Is that really a shift in tone that relates to the thesis? No. I mean, it kind of sets it up. It definitely sets it up. So maybe I could say that it does. But I think that it has to do with sort of the solutions that we go about discussing. But we'll say that this is the first shift in tone, because I think it does. This tends to be because the victim does not think the adult can solve the problem and may exacerbate the problem. Yeah, no. So again, the point is not about what solution is good. So this is not really the point. So I would say that this is not really the thing. It is commonly thought that cyberbullying is in large part the result. Commonly thought that the thing is a result of principle in psychology known as de-individuation. De-individuation in and of itself is not an evil psychological phenomenon. It merely represents the situations in which a person loses his or her sense of self. In many cases, de-individuation presents a euphoric experience. For example, so this is a shift in tone, but again, it doesn't really relate to the idea that, hey, we need to keep in mind that moral and cognitive development is distorted. So let's keep going. De-individuation presents a euphoric experience. For example, meditation or contemplative acts tend to lead to a blissful loss of tension from incessant rumination, so thought. Likewise, being present in a live concert with loud orchestration and bright flashing lights can generate enough stimuli for blah, 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 blah. It does become nefarious, however, when examining the part of the individuation that is generated through the substitution of individual identity with social identity. Okay, so now that seems to be the thing. So this is, again, this relates to that detachment from proper social interactions. So this, I would say, is definitely the main sort of first shift in tone that we're looking for here. Everything else is more contextual. Think about the two major United States political parties. When millions of Democrats and millions of Republicans argue with one another, it feels as if it is simply two individuals arguing back and forth. De-individuation, as it relates to social identity, has three characteristics: anonymity, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. These factors lead to an individual's feeling that they are more capable of getting away with behavior that would otherwise not be condoned. With the advent of the internet, the three factors that lead to this sort of de-individuation are ever present. According to this guy, children normally begin to develop a sense of autonomous morality from the ages of 9 or 10 and beyond. Essentially, this period of adolescent development marks a shift away from moral relativism, where morals are essentially blah, 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 to moral relativism, where morals are fluid and learned through something. So anyways, cool. So basically, things that, so the internet makes these de-individuation factors much more present, and that is scary, apparently, and that the author's saying, hey, be mindful that that's happening, and that it's a bad thing. Cool. Which of the following is an example of autonomous morality? Okay, so that's somewhere after the first shift in tone. That was somewhere here, between 3 and 4. So, yes. So, sense of autonomous morality. So, shift away from moral realism towards moral relativism. So moral relativism, where morals are fluid and learned through empathy of other points of view, and punishment does not assume equal intentions and motivations of all actors involved. It's not where morals are essentially instructed and made permanent from an imposing authority, and the degrees of punishment become more severe in proportion to it. So that's what autonomous morality is it is more fluid, and it's more empathetic, and things are not always equal and linear and stuff like that. So a child believes that their sibling should be more punished than themselves because their sibling ate more cookies than they did. Well, that sounds like moral realism. A child sees the equal punishment of two students who got in a fight as unfair because one student was acting in self-defense. Wow, now that's definitely the opposite of A, so I would say that B is the right answer here. Don't need to read the rest. What is the main conclusion of the passage? Again, just keeping ourselves aware. So the solutions for cyberbullying are complicated by the recent boom of social media. Meh. Society needs to be more open about detrimental effects of the internet on adolescent moral development. Yes, that's a little bit better. More aware, more open. Keeping adolescents in morally realist viewpoint will reduce the impact of social media. No. So moral realism is, again, the lesser sort of form of development. So they're sort of undeveloped when they're stuck there. So governments should regulate the sizes of online chat rooms. That's not the main point. So it's about just being more open about these effects. Which project would the author most support? The author would most support things that have to do with awareness. So government agencies dedicated to monitoring chat logs, campaigns focused on removing social stigma surrounding cyberbullying. Yeah, that could be, I guess, a little bit better. Maybe able to talk about it more. A parent discusses cyberbullying experiences of a child with a teacher. That's not necessarily as big as a campaign in terms of that. And also they talk about how that's more like one-on-one. You know, it's not really like about openness. So, yeah. I'd say B is better. Just, you know, campaigns, awareness campaigns, stuff like that. Cybersecurity initiatives that focus on verifying age restrictions. Nah. So anything that's about being more open about it. Which situation would be most likely to lead to de-individuation? An individual lying down with headphones in playing soft music? No, we need some loud music or something like that. They'd have to be meditating as well. Let's see. A runner jogging on a serene path, okay. At a local park, contemplating their day. No, because again, you have to lose your sense of self. You can't be wondering about your own day. So that would be wrong. An individual working late in the office computer to finish a data report. Again, you're not losing your sense of self. That's sort of mundane. and an individual at a theater deeply engrossed within a suspenseful movie scene. Okay, so you're losing your sense of self there. You're in a large theater, as opposed to just sort of lying down with headphones playing soft music. I'd say that being engrossed, deeply engrossed, is probably the key word there. Last question. Suppose a study comes out that shows empathy among teens increases the more social media groups they join. Oh, wow. How would this data affect the author's argument? So again, what is the author claiming? The author is claiming that the advent of the internet is causing more of these detrimental effects of de-individuation by social identity, group size and all this other stuff, and so more detachment. And so if it shows that teens' empathy are increasing the more they join social media, that would weaken it. That would contradict that for sure. So not this. Not this. So B versus C. So weaken the author's claim that the internet detaches teens. Yep. And so B is good. Alrighty. Another passage done. Again, fairly difficult, but not as bad as passage 8, I would say. In this situation, there were a lot of terms, and I tried my best to kind of skip around if I didn't need to read them. If I needed to in the later on problems, like for example, the first problem being on autonomous morality, I knew that it was somewhere around here, but I didn't spend the time while I was reading the passage initially trying to memorize what these things were, because they didn't relate specifically necessarily to the overall argument. I knew it was just more about proof. But yeah, so when I did, I was able to locate it and go with that. So this is basically reasoning beyond the text. Main conclusion being foundations of comprehension. Most supporting a project would be reasoning beyond the text. Which situation would most likely to lead to de-individuation? That would be foundations of comprehension. Did you understand the main sort of term of the passage? And suppose a study comes out, that's reasoning beyond the text, right? And so nothing really about reasoning within the text necessarily, but definitely a lot about reasoning beyond the text, being able to understand what de-individuation is, what is autonomous morality, and that tends to happen with these CARS passages that introduce, terms. The WMC tends to test your ability to understand what the definition of these terms are, especially if those terms are within a social science passage and that those terms are crucial in the discussion at hand, right? So if de-individuation was like the author spent 2 paragraphs, it's a long time on that, and they spent 1 paragraph on this sort of autonomous morality. I mean, those are 2 terms that make up the majority of the passage. So chances are you're going to be tested on, hey, did you understand what those 2 terms meant? So that's basically, this and this. And I would say that this is actually foundations of comprehension as well, now that I think about it. Because, again, it's just understanding, did you understand those 2 main principles of the passage? So, again, a child that views every act as sinful, of violence, right, that's sort of very standard unilateral kind of code, where morals are essentially instructed and made permanent from an imposing authority, like maybe God. So this is, when I say made permanent, it's like, every act of violence is a sinful act. Well, that's the idea of permanence, which is not autonomous morality. A child believes that the rules set in place by their school principal are just and permanent. Again, same thing, so it wouldn't be that. And why I didn't even look at C and D is because A and B are pretty much the opposite. So one of them is going to be the odd man out. That's one of the tactics I like to use, is the odd man out. So if 2 things are in opposition to each other, chances are one of them is right. So a child believes that their sibling should be more punished in proportion to the more cookies they ate, right? That's sort of an example of that. A child sees the equal punishment as unfair because one was acting in self-defense, right? That's a very mature sort of way of thinking about it, in terms of it being, empathetic, viewing other points of view, that punishment does not assume equal intentions, right? That's very, very good. So that's why B is the right answer. Main conclusion is difficult, right? So A is being solutions for cyberbullying. So it's not really talking about the solutions for cyberbullying. It's talking about we need more awareness. Whatever direction we take, it's not really about that. It's about keeping ourselves aware. Society needs to be more open about these detrimental effects of the internet on moral development. Yeah. Keeping adolescents in a morally realist viewpoint will reduce the impact of social media on de-individuation. Again, it's not about solutions to reduce the impact, and it certainly wouldn't even be about keeping them in morally realist viewpoints, because again, morally realist viewpoints are underdeveloped as opposed to morally relativists. And D is again pretty wrong, because it talks about governments should regulate. That's another solution. So solution. It's not about solution. It's about awareness. Which project would the author most support? And yeah, so government agencies dedicated to monitoring social apps, verifying age restrictions, and then those two things are basically some of the solutions that they were talking about here. Age restrictions for social media, content moderations, monitoring systems, right? Those are heated debates. So those are not the solutions that the author is siding with at all. So it would not be able to be A or D when you get to those points. But basically it comes down to B and C, right? So B and C are the difficult things here. So with B, with C, it says a parent discusses cyberbullying experiences of a child with a teacher. That does sound nice because it's sort of promoting that openness, but it's not really about society and keeping awareness as the necessary first steps, right? So a campaign that removes social stigmas around cyberbullying will be much more supported than one parent talking about the experiences of one child with one teacher. Which situation would most likely lead to de-individuation? Again, de-individuation, the components of that have to do with losing his or her sense of self. And you can do that either through these factors here, or just anything that kind of, like blissful loss of tension or loud orchestration, very engrossed in sensory experience, right? That can help kind of make you lose your sense of self. And so, when we went through it, playing soft music, that might sort of illustrate perhaps of meditative and contemplative, but we are rationalizing that. That's actually rationalization, because somebody lying down with headphones in doesn't mean that you're meditating. That's a rationalization. Even if you may do that, that's you projecting your own meaning into this as opposed to being critically thinking. And critical thinking is about using the information given to you, not really inserting your own sort of interpretations. It's really trying to interpret it as accurately and realistically as possible. So, and it's just, this is where bracketing is especially useful, because bracketing kind of helps you say, okay, well, even if A is okay, is there something stronger than it? And a runner jogging on a serene path, contemplating their day, again, that doesn't tackle the main principle of de-individuation, which is about situations in which a person loses his or her sense of self. And so A is definitely a situation where that'd be better, so B is crossed off. A versus C, an individual working late in the office computer to finish a data report. Again, you're not losing your sense of self. D, an individual deeply engrossed. That's the key word right there. And that actually is a word that was used in the passage itself. And then again, in this situation, that affects the author's claim directly. All right, I hope this was helpful. Make sure that you do practice these different sort of categories of problems, and that you realize that when it comes to why answers are wrong, it's much easier to understand why answers are wrong when you compare them to some other answer. So don't go and make the mistake of process elimination, where you look at each individual answer individually, right? You must bracket. When in doubt, bracket, okay? Because it's easier to determine whether or not something is weak when it's compared to something else. When something is relatively stronger than something else, it's much easier to then cross off those answer choices, as opposed to saying, oh, A sounds weak, let me cross that off. That's faster, and I know that you're dying to cross off answer choices, I get it, but just wait a second, bracket it, and make sure that that is the situation. All right? If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll see you in the next passage.